A disturbance in the stew, I feel. New Jedi listeners. Strong they are. Subscribe they must. Yes?
Hello there.
Incoming transmission.
You will go to the Dagobah system. There you will learn from Yoda, Master of the Stew.
A Jedi's strength flows from the stew.
There'll be no one to stop us this time.
Strong is the stew.
Yoda. You seek Yoda.
Yes.
Hello there and welcome to Yoda Stew, the strongest stew in the galaxy. A Jedi's strength flows from the stew. This is your dedicated spot for all things Star Wars. I'm your host, Ezra, here to guide you through the latest Star Wars news, insights, and discussion from a galaxy far, far away.
Red 12 standing by.
Red 6 standing by.
Red 4, standing by.
Red 11 standing by.
Red 9 standing by.
Red 2 standing by.
Lock as foils in attack position.
I have a bad feeling about this.
And you thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Friends, come on in. The stew is still strong. We've got a special guest today, Sir Matt, the Bud Knight from Bend the Knee, is here. How's it going, man? How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I am doing good, my friend. We are going to be talking about the Acolyte, very controversial Star Wars show.
Oh my God, dude. Like, seriously, though. I mean, it is. I knew. I actually told Lottie, I said, I am going to need Matt for one episode. And I just had seen all of the different reviews. I heard the grumblings. You know, Matt's the guy who, like historically, as we've podcasted together, who knows about the leaks, knows what's going on. He did all the sniffing around, all the digging to figure out what the heck was going to be happening in these episodes. So I didn't even have to do any of that for this episode. I just heard through the grapevine something monumental was going to be happening in episode 3. So before Acolyte ever started, I was like, dude, I'm thinking like episode 3, maybe would you be down to like, come on, second week. And so can't thank you enough for coming on because it is would you agree it is controversial, right? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think even if you're just talking about this episode itself, there's definitely a lot of controversy in the Acolyte, and it's very divisive amongst Star Wars fans. I don't think it helps that the show itself is extremely divisive among Star Wars fans, or the fact that Star Wars under Disney has also been extremely controversial, and we can get into that too but yeah, I can definitely see how a lot of people are going to have issues and bones to pick with this episode.
And so, okay, and this is what I want to do. I want to first just jump in here, and I want to start talking a little bit about episode 1, episode 2. Get your kind of thoughts on that. Give you some of my thoughts or whatever, and then we'll transition into episode 3 here. Because I even had like last night when I watched episode 3, I thought one thing, and then I'm starting to kind of even shift a little bit more in terms of what I'm thinking today. I rewatched it right before you and I popped on here, and I was like, I wrote down. I have a doc for us with some quotes that I'm like, I wrote down what Obi-Wan Kenobi said, just to compare, because I'm like, hold on a second, man. Some of this stuff is seeming a little bit crazy. But before we get into all that, again, as I said, don't forget to check out this coming Sunday. Matt's going to be doing the House of the Dragon, Bend the Knee. He and Jimmy are going to be doing some of that. Hopefully I'll get a chance to maybe pop over there, not to put him on the spot here. Maybe I'll get a chance to guest over on that show. That'd be sick. But yeah, it just would be it. So make sure you check that out. We'll also plug him here at the end. But okay, to jump in this real quick, what did you think of just the first 2 episodes? Again, this episode 3 is a flashback, and the first 2 are like the main thing. So just thoughts on the first 2.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say this. it's so difficult because as Star Wars has become more controversial, right? And it feels like every show that either gets bad ratings or whatever, Disney comes out and they say, "Oh, they're review bombing," right? Yeah. I mean, they said the same thing. They said the same thing about Kenobi and all this stuff, and eventually, at some point. I mean, hear me out. I mean,
I'm hearing you.
Don't hold back. I just want to throw this out. Okay. At some point, is it just that fans are review bombing every Disney show that comes out? I mean, not just Star Wars, but Marvel and everything.
Right.
Is it possible that the show just sucks? I mean, is that legitimately a possibility? Right.
Okay. And actually, in their minds, it seems like no. It seems like that's where it's a problem. People are like,
and that's where I sometimes also think Disney might be because if you look at the stuff the actors and actresses are saying before this is coming out, I mean, it's stuff that like obviously is going to tick off a lot of people, right? They have to know what they're doing. I mean, the Snow White lady for the Snow White movie, she came out and basically said like Snow White sucks, and they eventually, and like it got a lot of bad press, and eventually they're like, you can't say that anymore, right? Because it was like, you're like sure, we want to make it in a new direction and everything, and movie for the new age and everything, but like if you keep saying like Snow White sucks, then people aren't going to want to see it. And it felt like that was some of the stuff that was going on here, right? Where they said things like we want to make white men cry. Like why would you say that? Even if you want to make a very diverse show and everything, like I have no problems with that, right? Go right ahead. Right. But when you say things like that, you're automatically like ticking people off, and you're setting yourself up to fail by simply saying that. Like, even if you are coming out and you want to make a big statement about the direction that Star Wars should be in and everything, then by saying it's just a negative thing. Like, you could still say the same thing, but in a different way, right? You could say like, hey, like we're going to be like pushing Star Wars in some new directions. Like we're really excited about it, instead of that sort of like negative, like screw you people who have been fans for a long time, because that's just setting yourself up for potentially being review bombed.
Right, exactly. That's I like how you said that, which is basically like saying, hey, here's what we want to do and where we're headed, and focus on what you're doing. But the kind of critiquing and going backwards and saying, well, because there was a moment at Star Wars Celebration where one of the actors, had kind of said something about like kind of dissed the Star Wars fandom and community, and saying, isn't it about time that we had a woman kind of in Star Wars leading Star Wars? And it's like, well, I mean,
did you not see Ahsoka? Or
I was going to say, let's remember all the other women who have already. I mean, actually, George Lucas's wife is largely responsible for all of the editing. They say that she literally the success of the originals came down to her editing skills, man. Like she really cut that up and stuff. And it's like that. Anyway, it was just. I think you're right. It's setting up this controversial kind of like, we want to say things that are triggering, or that are almost like not fighting words, but they're just really controversial. And the talk is not about like the show or the product that you made. The talk is about other things that are social things. Like the one interview about the guy, like gay nerds are gay, and I don't know if you saw that whole one where and this guy was kind of like, well, some of them aren't, and I'm watching like Star Wars Theory and Star Wars Explained, and trying to like
they're just going back and forth.
Trying to examine what everybody's kind of saying about this. And it's just like, guys, I have to say at the end of the day,
what's the show about?
What's the show about? What is your message and theme? You remember Bob Iger came back and he said, we need to remember we're an entertainment organization. If the shows are not like inspiring you and entertaining you, and if they're not doing that, if they're not profitable, at the end of the day, that speaks for itself too. The money, as Matt has always said, and I told Lottie this too, I said, I guarantee Matt will know about the numbers and the money and stuff, because when the views aren't coming in, the viewership's not there. Ironically, Matt, the Solo movie came out, and I'm like, the fandom's like, we freaking like it, right?
I know.
Most people who saw it, on average, were like, it's pretty good.
I've said that for years.
And the numbers were down, so they were like, oh, clearly we can't do this. And then now when we look at Disney Plus, there's a big curtain that nobody can really, that's controlled by the people behind the curtain. But anyway, it's like, we don't know where how profitable are some of those things, and why are we still pushing some of that stuff? Where's the money going? The budget for this is double of the Kenobi. Okay. That was shocking for me, that this was double the budget for this show, when you had Obi-Wan Kenobi and they just banked on Obi-Wan, Vader, and all those characters bringing everybody back to the table, which interestingly, it did. First of all the numbers were there for that show. Still had tons of problems and stuff, and it's taken me time to come to grips with that, because I love Kenobi.
It had some Kenobi. Kenobi for me did have some great, had some epic moments. Obviously, getting Hayden back as Anakin and stuff like that. But the structure of the show was not particularly great. No, it's like Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett had some cool moments, but structurally, it is a mess.
It's a wreck. It's a wreck, and that's the thing. So when people criticize Book of Boba Fett, we're all like, oh, it's okay. That criticism seems to be more okay. And we haven't gotten a lot of pushback on that, but it's like, you criticize this show and it feels like everybody, it's so touchy. It's such a touchy thing.
Well,
I don't.
It's like I don't want to like go down that, like it's a road like that, as a fan I don't even like to go down, because they're like, oh, the female lead, whatever. And I saw some other Star Wars people say this too, is it feels like anytime there's anything with a female lead, like, or like race is potentially an issue, Disney is like always out there being like, you guys are review bombing it because you're racist or you're sexist. It's like, but actually if you go look at Ahsoka's numbers actually did pretty good. And that's how you can't get more diverse than an alien. Okay. How, right. Ahsoka is like a black woman playing the thing, and you have an Asian woman playing Sabine, and Ahsoka did actually pretty good. So I don't think Star Wars fans are opposed to a female led character, as long as the story is good. I think the Acolyte has structurally some like story problems they could still fix. We're only 3 episodes in, guys. For sure. You got to give it something. And there actually are some moments that I actually kind of liked in this. True. And some story elements that I actually like what they did here, as opposed to, in a way, they kind of have a similar thing that Ahsoka did. Because I'll actually be honest with you, I kind of didn't like Ahsoka.
Okay.
Because you and I haven't even ever talked about Ahsoka, but I just wasn't into the idea of giving Sabine. I just wasn't into the idea of Sabine as a Force user.
No, actually, I agree. So let's just two seconds. 2 seconds.
The show was great. Like all the stuff that happened, all the cool lore stuff and everything.
Flashbacks.
Just specifically Sabine. Just because her character that never felt like. Actually, I liked the idea that she tried to become a Jedi.
Right.
Because I was like, that is Sabine. Like she's still Sabine has always kind of struggled to like, which path do I go down? But once she started using the Force, I was like, I feel like we're kind of giving everybody the Force. And we already have a character who's like a Mandalorian Force user who's also going through an identity crisis, sort of with Grogu. And so I felt like it was kind of the same thing. Right. And so I didn't like that. But with the Acolyte, I actually kind of like what they're doing here. Like for me, the best part was when the guy from Squid Game, Saul, the character's name, Lee Jung Jae, who's awesome, by the way. I think he's great, and I think some people say they didn't like him or whatever. I think he's great. I loved him. When he's talking to, I have to pull their names up here because she plays 2 characters, and Amandla Steinberg, right? Who plays Osha and May. I just think I resonate more with the character of Osha, because there's somebody who like tried to become a Jedi, it didn't work out, and now here's her master coming in, and he's still kind of friendly with her, and like, okay, like that's a cool building block
for sure,
right? For sure. I'm in now. I'm locked in on that. Like, and if she ends up using the Force at the end, like down, like
sick, right?
Like that kind of works because she's a new character, and I'm like, and I think she will. I think obviously they're going to set up a big fight between the 2 sisters, and that's totally the path it's headed towards. The other, on the flip side, though, I don't think she's as good as May. May is like, as a character, just like, I just don't vibe with it. It feels kind of overdone in a way, and maybe it's because the same person's playing her, which is super tough. So kudos to her for trying to play 2 characters, because that's like hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, like you said, it's almost like when you go to May, it's like she has to force herself to be that type of character.
She feels like over aggressive,
right? Because when she's Osha, I'm like, awesome. I said the same thing to Lottie that day. I was like, man, I freaking like that. But then anytime she's the bad girl, I'm sort of like, it just feels weird.
She's actually better, but she's better when she's with, oh god, I gotta pull it up here. The smuggler guy. Swimmer.
Yeah, I think it said Chimere.
Sorry, Chimere. Yeah, when she's with Chimere, and there's a little bit of vulnerability to her character, like there, I think she's a little bit better. But I just like, I really couldn't get behind the scene where she's attacking Torbil or whatever.
Oh yeah,
who's Tommen Baratheon, by the way, from Game of Thrones.
Just blew my mind.
He is. Yeah, he's Tommen Baratheon. I know I've seen that guy somewhere before, but he's got the beard and everything, where he's just like sitting there in the sphere and she's just like attacking him. I was like, this is like the cheesiest thing I've ever seen.
Well, okay, I have to say, like, because I think even just in my first review, like last week when I talked about this, I was a little bit like, this is awkward, kind of stiff. It felt a little weird, but I was still trying to like hang in there. I rewatched episodes 1 and 2, and I thought, okay, it's actually a little bit better when you watch it a second time. Like everything is, you start to feel a little more normal, but there's some stiffness to her character for sure. That's just weird. And the whole Master Torben thing was so freaking weird. I was like, what is this guy? How does this guy have this sort of power, and why have we never seen something like this before? Like, she can't even touch him. It's like some force energy shield bubble thing, which was whatever. But she does feel a little different. I think as far as the cast and the acting too, since we're kind of on that, a lot of these guys, I think the acting's been pretty good. I gotta even say, and you might disagree with me, but in this episode 3, we just met her, the mother Ananisa. I might be messing up names too because they're all new to us right now. I thought her acting was actually, I'm going to disagree with some of the stuff that was, but like her acting.
No, acting was, I will say the ceremony came across a little weird.
Oh,
dude, the ceremony, it was just like, it's like not even that they were doing the ceremony, but it was just like bad. It just
Why is the one girl doing that?
I don't know. It just seemed weird. I mean, what they have going plot wise is kind of, it's just the show in general. It's just a show where like they have some cool idea. They have some cool ideas. They're just not hitting on everything at the right place and time. And I feel like this is a show that I don't think like Rotten Tomatoes has like a 20. I don't think it's nearly that bad. But I think it's a show that like a season, if they were to take fan criticism and whatever and try to improve on it, they could fix a lot of stuff in a season 2.
Yeah.
Saying that they will choose to do so. Right. But I do feel like this is a show that like if it gets another season and it reflects and kind of fixes some things, like there's some stuff here that could make this work.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think, there's some stuff that as we started this whole podcast, it's like what really sets, I guess, people on edge is the way they started the press tour, the way they started all the press around this stuff. And it set people off to where everyone is looking for the thing that's going to just go,
right.
We know what that is.
They totally set themselves up.
They set themselves. Yeah. And it's like when you just actually, a lot of times you get those people who I was watching a few different YouTubers last night, and in the feed, it was just straight. Everyone's like zeros, 0, 0, 0, right. Hate the show. And some of them like, haven't even seen it, not even going to continue watching it. It's just like, man, dude. And it all comes down to the press tour and the way they framed it. And I know people are like, well, you got to get over that, go take it for what it is. But it's part of your job as a company to sell this show. And also like, packaging is everything. Look at us on YouTube. It's all about packaging your video. And then if there's good stuff in there, if the people are, if you do, okay, so quick sidestep here. If I do a YouTube video and I have clickbait as the thumbnail and it doesn't match what's inside the actual freaking video, the viewer is pissed because you clickbaited me. And so a similar thing has happened here where before we ever got to the product, the packaging for this was off. And it just felt like, okay, we want to like your show. Packaging's up. Now everyone is super critical coming into the show. And it's just like, and there are things to be critical of, which is fine. But man, I don't know. It's just kind of, this episode was the hate out there for the show is through the roof right now.
Well, now and we'll get to it because I think we should still talk a little bit perhaps about some of the other stuff first. But I mean, you messed with some serious, like you kind of messed with, like this episode kind of messed with like the whole deal, like the whole structure of like George Lucas's Star Wars, which is just like a no. Like at least that's kind of one thing. The sequels never really the sequels never really touched like the structural integrity of the Chosen One or any of this stuff. And we kind of thought they were going to with Rey. They never really fully committed to that. Right. Mostly because they didn't really know what they were doing, which is why they had Palpatine come back because they had no other thing to do. They're just like, all right, well, I guess somehow Palpatine returned. And how, like, I'm sure they looked at that script and like, well, how does Palpatine come back? I don't know. Somehow. All right, throw that in there.
Mystery box. JJ and his mystery box. That's a mystery.
Just throw that in there. So I think that's like you already have all these people that are like super upset about it to begin with. Right. And 2, now you're going down. And also, if you remember, if you go back and you think about the way this show is kind of talked about for like a long while, it's not really what we were kind of told this show would be for a long time. Like we were kind of told like it was going to be like, I don't know, more Sith heavy, some more of this other stuff. And it was going to, feel like I think about like the Dooku Lost book, right?
Yes.
Remember where Dooku's like, hey guys, I think the Sith are back.
Right.
And like nobody kind of believes him.
Yep.
Like now the Sith are kind of back, and it seems like everyone's just like, okay, is what it is. Like it's
and how can that be?
Really weird. It's really weird. Yeah.
It's really weird that like you said, you brought up Dooku, which is a good point, in that Dooku Lost book that I thought too, that's a much more like, we're going to focus on that side. He gets an acolyte in Asajj Ventress or whatever.
Yeah.
But he talks about that. And then you're like, okay, if they're not going to believe him, what? And then you're also going to go back here even further and show us a Sith Lord. How the heck does Ki-Adi-Mundi say the Sith have been extinct for a millennia? How does he say that if there's all this knowledge? And I think they're going to do some cover-up thing. I don't know. We'll get to that too in a second. But yeah, it just they didn't sell it to us correctly, right? I mean, it's like the way it was talked about was so different, and it was people were the craziest thing, dude. One of the most controversial Star Wars figures out there. I'll go ahead and say his name, Star Wars Theory. I'll go ahead and say it. He was a fan of this show up until an interview. Up until one interview where somebody said something, he's like, what? And then he kind of got all upset or whatever. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to continue. I'm going to fight through that and keep going. And then it's been press tour, interview at one. And he's like, guys, all right, let's just hold on. And then it's just, but you just,
what's his name? I got to pull him up here. I saw this was floating around too. Who is it? Charlie Barnett, who plays, Yord Fondar, who seems like when I first saw him, I was like, I don't know about this dude. And I will say, honestly, I want to say this about the show. Ian, I do still feel this way after 3 episodes, but it could totally change. Is when I watched Andor, I felt like this is what would happen if HBO was given a Star Wars show to make.
Yeah.
The drama was amazing and rich, and like it was slow paced,
right?
But it like all the things paid off, right? I mean, to me, I Can't Swim is like top 5 moments in Star Wars ever. It was like one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in all of Star Wars.
Yep.
When I watch The Acolyte, I feel like it's what would happen if the CW was given a Star Wars show.
That's a great, yeah. And they have totally different audiences, totally different vibes and feels, but you're like, you almost want to take it down a notch. It just feels corny. It felt cheesy. It feels a little bit like people were talking about one of the things,
but that actor, real quick, that actor had said in multiple interviews, that Anakin blew up the Death Star. He said it like 3 or 4 times, and like people are like, what? And he like kept doubling down, and it's like, so then it just adds to it. Like, do you guys even like watch? It's kind of like when Taika Waititi, who did Thor Ragnarok and these other things, has kind of quoted Natalie Portman if she wanted to be in Star Wars. And it's like, hold on, this guy's making a movie,
dude. Yeah, right. He didn't know Natalie Portman was in Star Wars. Like that's bad.
Like, I mean, one thing if she was a minor character, but she's like a pretty major character in Star Wars.
And here's the thing, dude. People can say, well, press shouldn't matter. You should look at the story for the story. Dude, press matters in everything. I mean, the whole so. The fact that nobody corrected him or also went back and forth. I mean, get it. He's an actor. He misspoke. He said whatever, but he did it 3 times and doubled down, and nobody stopped him, and no producer from Lucasfilm went in there. And, now his character and his acting, I actually think he's kind of funny. But there's some things that it
felt a little stiff in episode
cheesy.
1, but I think he's coming.
Yeah. I'm actually starting to like him more than I like some of the other characters. Although, did you see where he was watching the fight that was 2 meters away with the goggles? Why? Was that just because he's
and then everyone's really freaking. I think people are really over freaking out about the fire in space. Like,
I know,
campfire in space. I'm just like, because I watched the episode and I thought, hold on, this is like a big deal. And it's literally like 2 seconds, and everyone's like, I mean, I'm just like, okay, I do get it that it's
but
it sort of is what it is. But I guess to me, I wasn't as like, oh my God, this is like ruining Star Wars.
No,
I was like, there's a lot of other things that are like structurally unsound with this show. Like the fire is the least of them.
Right. And I said the same thing. I was actually like, Lottie hasn't seen a lot of Star Wars. She's, we've done the whole journey through Star Wars and stuff, but she was sort of like, oh, that's odd for a sci-fi thing. But I'm like, well, they've done it before. It's not a huge deal. But I guess like they spent so much time on it that some people were like, it wasn't just a quick thing and they made her focus on it. So we all focused on it. And then I was like, all right, that's kind of weird. But let's move on. Yeah, that wasn't one that really took me out of it either. But we'll get to some of the ones that did. But yeah, the first, it's just the corniness of the fight and then killing Master Indara. The fight, by the way, this on a second watch of that the first fight, it's much better than I thought it was out the gate. I really thought it didn't look that good. And you were talking about the CW, and I've seen online that the budget and the sets, some people, and I don't know, I haven't really thought much about it, but they're saying that the sets just don't look as good as you would think for the budget that we got. They may be slightly better than Kenobi.
Well, so there actually has been a little bit about that. And I remember, just thinking about over the past couple of years, reading and stuff like that, is where some people have actually criticized, like I will say the show that looks the most different is actually Andor. Because Andor was actually filmed like on location, and they built actual sets. They weren't using the volume as much as they do like in the Mandalorian and everything. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me. Like the set design in Andor to me was amazing. Like it's like Andor is
it's good.
It's so good. Like a lot of the stuff they did, really helped sell the tone of it. Like a lot of times when they show like the Imperial offices and everything, and like everything is like perfectly square, and like the world they created, I mean, you felt like, wow, you're in like 1984. Right. I mean, you felt like you're, Equilibrium. Remember, that movie, like the very like government takeover, the whole deal. And that was something that was really translated well in that show. Whereas, here the sets, like they don't even feel like other Star Wars shows. And I will say we are still once again not using the Star Wars soundtrack. I don't know why they're so opposed to using the Star Wars score. Because like there's definitely moments where in this thing where I felt like you should have used the Force theme.
Right, me too, actually. Exactly. Yeah, in episode 3, I thought when she's walking down the ramp, I thought that sounded close to it, and then it wasn't. And I was like, well, why not? Yeah. But yeah, why not just use it? And then it feels like too, and I know this is a thing where new writers, new people come in, they want to have their own creative spin and their own touches and stuff. But it's also like you're coming into a pre-existing universe, and it's an established thing. You can have some creative freedoms or whatever, but some people are getting a little, I don't know, they're going too far, and they're not even embracing the thing that I think would help their new characters. Like you can make us feel the same thing for Master Soul when you cue the music, right? You cue the music, here he walks in, we're like, all right, I've heard that music before behind other characters. That's pretty awesome. I'm feeling it, and then they don't. And we're like, this just feels weird. It looks like a fan film. People are saying it looks like a fan film. Yeah. And that's where you lose people, because there's ways to tie.
For sure.
Yeah. It just feels kind of awkward and stuff. But anyway, okay, so kind of ready to jump into episode 3, like the big.
Let's do it.
Okay, I have a doc here. Let me pull it up real quick. So a couple things, and this is kind of a joke. I said to Matt, I said, look, major question, and he doesn't have to answer it. I know he's already got it, but do you have your needle and thread? Do you have your needle and thread for this show? Because we're going to try to thread the needle in this conversation, in this discussion. That has gone on. That I don't know why that didn't trigger me a whole lot, that they used a different terminology just to say it, but then they went overboard with the whole thread thing, and that's just really ticked off a lot of different people, because they're like, well, you're re-explaining the Force to us, we kind of get it or whatever. But anyway, needle and thread. So we talked about episode 1. Okay, let me move on here. I wanted to get just real quickly, because we used to do this a lot, you and I. What would be your out of 10? And I'm doing this for a reason. On episodes 1 and 2, just as a whole, we can lump them together. Where would you give that as a score for episodes 1 and 2? And then what would your score be for episode 3? And I'll tell you mine.
So I don't like to do out of 10, because I find I always view like 7 as like a C, and so then I like always kind of discard the rest. So for whatever reason, I always like to do like out of 5 stars.
5. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. I would actually probably give the whole thing and each episode about 2 stars out of 5, with episode 2, maybe being a little higher. I felt like 2 is probably the better episode of the 3.
Okay, I would agree with that, because when I was thinking about my 10, like I was watching last night some folks who were like rating this as a 0, and it's like I don't think it's a 0.
It's not that bad.
And I don't know, people are just, that's where people are just pissed because of whatever, different things. But when you really try to actually seriously look at it, I think it is pretty low. I think it is Like I was pretty good with 1 and 2, and I was feeling it. And then even in talking to Lottie about episode 3, I was sort of like, okay, what's the big deal? And then I started kind of watching it again, and it's just like your initial reaction. Right afterwards, I was like, okay, I can tell a few things that are going to trigger some people, but like, what is really kind of going on here? So I had to go back and watch it again and listen to every line and what they said, and I'm like, okay. And I had to start thinking about the implications of what these things are going to do. I think the ratings and the scores are lower because of the context of Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, I think some of what they said in dialogue, the show could be, like I said, the acting is good. There are good moments in episode 3 for sure. Besides the ascension ceremony, that was
that was just weird.
That's zero. That was an absolute
that's like,
zero.
it's
I
just
hate to say
cringe.
that.
Like it just
Cringy.
wasn't even. Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
I
anyway.
I agree.
So okay, good. Yeah, because I thought maybe like a lot of people I was seeing online were like, okay, 1 and 2, I'm kind of like either you liked 1 and then you liked 2 less, or you liked 2 more, whatever. But people were still giving it a fair, shake. And then they got to this, and I think as people really started to absorb what was happening, what was being said, and the implications to Star Wars, a new fan coming in, like a kid or somebody brand new watching this, doesn't quite understand all the things that are being said there necessarily. And if this is your entry point, whatever, it looks good, it's stunning, it's enough to kind of get you going. But that fan base is going, what are you trying to say here in terms of like creating children and life with the Force? And so that's where I think it takes your star value down because of the whole context of everything. And I've had to sit here and think more about it. And I'm like, yeah, it is sort of bold. You didn't have to do that. You could have told a totally different story. You didn't have to go down this route whatsoever. And you still could have put all the things in there. I don't care. 2 witches together, a coven of witches, all that kind of stuff is cool, whatever. But it's the mystic side of the Force that's the mystery box. Unlike how Palpatine came back, like maybe you should answer that question. The Force stuff, you got to leave as this bigger, greater mystery. And now they're starting to kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right. Because it's the whole deal is now you're essentially playing with the idea of how Anakin was created. And that's always sort of been the most intriguing lore piece of Star Wars. And like, I agree with what you said. It is better that it's always been left a mystery, right?
Yeah.
Whereas did like Palpatine secretly create him, or like, did somebody do something, or was it the balance of the Force that caused Anakin to get created? I will say the idea of like this group, this coven of women that at first when they were talking about like, I don't want to be a witch, I was like, are these like Night Sisters? Are they a splinter of like Night Sisters or something? Yeah, right. Which like, okay, that's a cool thread. You can go, you can go play with, like they're a splinter group or whatever. But now, and I will say when they said the power of 1, the power of 2, I was like, oh, that could be cool because there's maybe some like Sith stuff to it.
Yeah.
So like, okay, maybe they're like also like something to do with the Sith or something like that. Well, we do know this like power of life being created or whatever with like perhaps Plagueis. Again, that ties into that bigger Anakin mystery box type thing. So I kind of hope that's the only thing they essentially kind of play with. And I actually feel like leaving it a little more ambiguous, like maybe Plagueis comes from this. Like maybe actually May could, she has some Jedi or Sith we saw in like a thing that she's working, former Jedi or whatever Sith that she's working with. Right. She actually, in theory, could be Plagueis's master and perhaps pass this secret on to him.
Right.
And then he like kills her. But I feel like the whole deal is gonna be like an Osha May thing, and that's gonna be like the route that they go. So like, there is some interesting ways this thing could go, but the way they're going about it is kind of just wonky because of this like it's so many things that have been established in other Star Wars canon, like Dooku Lost and some of these other things. Even we've seen like even in episode 1 they say like, oh, the Sith have been extinct for like a long time. So like, well, we know the Sith have been operating but in the shadows, but now it's like we have a full group of Jedi that have met with them, and at least maybe she's hunting them down. But I mean, you would have to imagine that they would have said like, oh, we met this group of things and that's why we brought this kid here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Also, real quick, the thing that really actually threw me off is I think the little kids like acting is great for what they were trying to do, but their story just makes no sense because you have Osha who's like, I do want to be a Jedi when the Jedi show up. And it feels like it's the first time she's ever even heard that the Jedi exist.
Yes, I know, right?
And so it's just like, what? And then she's talking about like, well, I don't like May. I don't want to have my life tied to May. And it's like, well, why? Like
Why?
there was nothing about, there was
Yeah.
like, just like, oh, I don't want to stay by this tree forever, you know?
Dude,
And
okay.
like,
Yeah.
hold on, remember and then the tree deal. Remember that was gonna be like a big deal, like the tree that creates the Force and all that. Remember that was a big deal. That was a potential thing that could have been done in the sequels, and Snoke is tied to this tree.
Oh yeah,
all this stuff. So it feels like they're kind of pulling some of that out too. But it's just like they didn't give us a reason. Like now we know, hey, she started a fire, almost killed her. But like, why would you almost kill her?
I know.
Like, I don't think they're gonna give us another flashback episode to show us like before what happened with them. And it's so
right.
It just feels like a lot of this stuff is coming from like nowhere. Like, yeah, there's still episodes to play with, but if you should have given us like a little bit more to make the scenes that we're watching make sense.
Makes sense. And that is what you said. So earlier you were like, there is a chance to kind of maybe do more, but I don't think they're going to, right? I think that is the flashback we got, and they're not going to tell us, how does she know about the Jedi? Like, why were the Jedi showing up there? What maybe they will answer that question, but why does May and Osha not really get along? What's the deal? Why does she hate her? And then why start the fire? And it feels like that's the only flashback we're going to get. I could be wrong. It's possible that they're going to give us more answers, but right now it really seems like that's it. And then there's just a lot of weirdness. There's no reason she would want to. How does she know about the Jedi at all? At all?
Yeah, it feels like this entire covenant is like they would never even want to talk about them.
No. It's like they know they said they were in exile, and so maybe they are on the run or something. But these children are so young that unless and the only way in which they would have heard about the Jedi, the connotation around that conversation about Jedi would be negative. So why, if seemingly from what we saw here, how did Osha develop feelings and want to be a Jedi? And she says, look at their robes. Look at all the mothers around you wearing robes. Everybody's wearing robes.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
yeah, they're all wearing robes. Yeah, I know.
It just does not feel at all like well set up or well kind of thought. They do just do this whole thing where the only thing that's believable is, okay, you start at the tree. She just feels different. She doesn't want to be there. And so anybody who shows up, she'd be down to kind of go be with. Right. But just saying, I want to be a Jedi when they've not even really said who they are. I don't even know if anybody said the word Jedi in front of her before they got there.
It feels like it quite literally feels like she literally just is like handed a lightsaber and she's probably like, yeah, this looks cool.
Just looks which was better.
That was to me the thing that like the ceremony, I was like, all right, this is kind of cringe, but that was the thing that really took me out of the whole deal. So I was like, there's no, it felt like you were just like, I don't know, like forcing these characters to do these things. Like you didn't have there's no reason as to why they're doing what they're doing. Because I mean, it feels like this whole sister conflict is going to be the structure of the show, which like twins. Okay. And I've seen some people saying like one of them is going to kill, maybe Osha's ultimately going to end up having to fight and kill May. And maybe May will actually be one of the last Sith, which causes the Force to go in like out of balance, meaning that Anakin can ultimately get created. Like, okay, that's kind of a cool, route to go if that is going to be the trigger for this whole deal. So again, there are pieces, but it's just like,
it's not. It's disconnected a little bit, and it's a little wonky and awkward and stiff. Okay, one of the things that you just mentioned, and I want to just talk about this because I know, there's people who think like, okay, they're doing all this stuff that's going to cause a ripple effect. And this is why Plagueis will do what he tries to do or learn, or why the Force responds and creates Anakin. But I know, because you can watch all these YouTubers out there and all the other podcasters who are like, they hate that. They hate that like this show is trying to be the reason why everything happened in the prequels. And that's where it's like, I'm not, whatever. I don't really care that they're trying to do that. Make sure you do it well. Like this is a little bit, it's playing with fire there. And it's to be like in this episode, playing with fire, and they totally are. It's dangerous. This is a very dangerous thing. It's a very risky move in terms of making a show to go play with the chosen one thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's like, we're the reason why this information is either passed on or, okay, here's the other thing, Matt, if these witches can do that, and then they don't pass it down to the Sith or the Acolyte or whoever that person is that we see, and there's no sort of like passing of they clearly can do it. The fact that they can do it is interesting. They're killed, so maybe the information dies with them, and they can't transfer it on through. The kids don't really know what Mother Anastasia did, but there's what's ticking people off is these witches figured out how to create life. They dabbled in the dark arts, very Sith-like, but yet Palpatine, Plagueis, Tenebrae, all these guys could not figure it out, and it just to them, I think, feel they're tampering. They're trying to get it right, but the Force is bigger and more like it feels like they sort of got control over the Force, and
what's her name comes in and Trinity, right? She comes in and she's like, hey, it's against Republic law to try to do this. So it sounds like maybe somebody or they had tried to do it before. True. So clearly it's kind of like a known thing.
Okay. Yeah.
That somebody may have tried to, or maybe maybe it was she saying you can't do it with kids. No, she said something about
you can't train kids. Yeah. There's a law against them training.
She describes them as Force users.
Right. Yeah, and that was there's a lot of dialogue, by the way, and it's so sad because this episode is so controversial. There's so many different things going on here. Like some of the stuff that Mother Anastasia says. Let me read some quotes real quick. Just about this. She's talking about the thread. All living things are connected by the same thread. A thread woven through all of existence. Some call it the Force and claim to use it, but we know the thread is not a power you wield. Now, she says the thread is not a power that you wield, but then the very next line is like, but pull the thread, change everything. It ties you to your destiny. It binds you to others. So they talk about how you're not supposed to wield it, but yet they wielded this thread power, the Force, to create life, essentially. And so it's just a weird thing. Like what Mother Anastasia is saying doesn't quite what she's preaching anyways about how we're in this nice, awesome relationship with the Force. And like, it's, we, unlike the Jedi, we don't try to control it. We try to work with it. Well, what did they do to make these kids? They clearly controlled and manipulated and did something dark with the Force to create these kids. And that's their dirty, dark secret. And so there's some interesting conversation in there about like, do these kids have a choice? For example, May and Osha are going up for the Ascension thing. And I made a joke to Lottie the other day. Oh, good. Matt will know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever been in church and the preacher comes up to you and he says, amen, with a question mark? Let me tell you, if you don't say amen back, I mean, Satan is on you. I mean, you're like, in my church especially, the preacher says amen, you say amen back. That whole Ascension ceremony was them forcing these kids to accept their sort of thing, but yet they're pissed that so there is a message in there that's kind of cool. Like, okay, they're forcing these kids to do this thing, but hey, you're going to grow up one day and you might change you might not want to be a Jedi. I know you've never heard about being a Jedi, but you can go with them, but you might want to change one day.
And I also hate the Jedi, but I guess you can.
But we're doing the same.
Yeah, and our whole thing has been to protect you from the Jedi.
Yeah, I know. So
it just comes across so.
Well, the problem is that there's
weird.
It starts off like there's maybe some good messages in there. There's some maybe good things about like who wields power and all this kind of stuff. But then it gets lost in terms of one, what you did what you're able to do with the Force. And then everything that they're saying seems to contradict themselves. Like Mother Anastasia, when she says stuff, it seems like their actions don't match with what they're saying. And so therefore I don't believe them at all. Witches are liars. So I'll go ahead and tell you right now, the good book says that. Right. It says to not suffer a witch to live.
I don't
trust them. But so yeah, it's like it's just hard to believe if their message was to try to get us to be sympathetic with and understand those witches. Well, I don't know that is the case, but the messaging between their faction and the Jedi and who can wield power, it's getting lost because they seem to be contradicting themselves in their messaging and they're making the Jedi look bad. Now, the other big thing, and I got a question for you on this, because this is what really, we think we know what happens. People can kind of infer that the Jedi went in there and killed him. Do you think that? Do you think the Jedi went in there and killed these witches or what? What do you think happened?
I think so because I think that's probably why she's hunting them all down.
Right. It seems like that seems to be the setup. And so from the 5
I
YouTubers
also
wa-
think there is
yeah.
like a shot in a trailer or something like that. That now that I've seen that set, I think it's. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Now that you've seen that set, I think there is a shot of
They-
like all that group like all holding lightsabers.
Ugh.
And I think in like one of the trailers or something, I think it's like in that same set. So I'd imagine, yeah, they probably go in and tank that
and
whole group of women.
Which is interesting. What happened to the power of many, by the way? I guess against the Jedi, it's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
Tommen Baratheon, I'm so glad you said that's who that was. Master Tommen, I'm gonna call him Master. I think it's Torben is his name, but Master
I think
Tommen.
it's Torben, yeah.
He goes, dude. Could you imagine the one cool thing? Like Master Andara or Master Trinity keeps her calm when they touched her Padawan. Dude, if I were him and you touched my Padawan like that, I would come back in there and whoop every single one of you. I can't believe
exactly.
that. Which is stupid. Now the other thing though is that the Jedi are meant to be during this time even better than not better but more peaceful and more I don't know, like more in tune with the light side. Actually, like further back you go, this is like the High Republic, not really the High Republic time. It's the end of the High Republic era, but
Although there is a character.
Who? Oh, which one?
The Venestra Row, baby.
Venestra. Yeah. True.
And we saw the thing, and man,
the light whip. Yeah.
The light whip. Pour
people,
one out. I'm still pouring one out for Master Douglas.
Dude, Master Douglas, dude. You're the only person who I know that gets that.
It is the most. It is like as and I read all the High Republic stuff the day it came out. We're like, all right, let's dive into all of it. And the one that got us was like the junior kids novel with Venestra Row and like her Master Douglas. Their ship is going down.
Dude,
and their ship is going down, and he just saves the whole. It's sick.
Top Star Wars. It's one of the top Star Wars in novels I've ever read. And I was like, did you I had to like go back and read that again, dude. The ship is going down, and it's kind of like that moment. I know it's maybe you remember in Superman when oh gosh, Jonathan Kent dies and he throws up the hand and holds Clark back. The tornado's coming in or whatever, and it's like a sad moment. He's like, and he puts his hand up. He's like, stop, right? It's almost like Master Douglas is just sort of like Venestra, only a master, like a true master moment.
I mean, we've seen that in Star Wars too. It's like when Kanan.
It's exactly like like the Kanan moment, and so that just gave me chills because. Yeah, that's exactly what happened there. So cool that she's in it. Although, I mean, I don't know. She seems a little sus. She seems a little, as my students would say, sus. I don't know what the deal is there, but it's cool that she's in it. But it's the fact that what's pissing people off, or what will tick them off, if the Jedi went in there and massacred those people, that just doesn't seem like what the Jedi would do. What would be the reason? I understand, Tommen being pissed because he got possessed, but he seemed fine on the ship. And so what's going on?
He drinks the poison and kills himself.
Why? He clearly must have killed him. He clearly must have went in there and went off. I wonder if they tried to possess him again, and that's what Indara was like, F this, I'm gonna go get you guys, and went crazy.
Yeah. My guess is that they would is that maybe they probably think, because remember they all think that they think May is dead.
Yeah.
So my guess is that May runs off and they can't find her. And so they think May is probably killed in the fire. And they have Osha. So that would be the thing. And they go to like, hey, what's going on here? And then they realize that and so then maybe they attack them, and that's what happens. Right. And then May goes, my guess would be May goes in, probably finds all like her whole family and everything dead, and Osha's gone. Right. Because Osha says I haven't seen her in years.
Yeah, no, they did that well. At least I understood. Yeah, it made more sense. Like, okay, they're there. She falls and somehow makes it. Master Soul catches her. He couldn't catch the other one. Because for a while, I was like, are they really trying to say that these Jedi are that guilty? Like, how is a Jedi that guilty and sinful that he decides to poison himself and just say, you know what, you're right. Let me drink it. Like, that seems crazy to me.
That doesn't seem like something a Jedi would do.
No, it seems really strange that he would. Why would he feel that much guilt and not Master Indara or Kelnaka or whatever? Maybe Torben really was ticked that they took control of his mind and he lost his.
I also just find it hard to believe that she's killing Jedi because it seems like we're going to see that more and more with knives.
Me too, dude. I told Lottie that. I was like, I think this one might be bad because you've got people's Sabine surviving the lightsaber. I gotta agree. Qui-Gon Jinn is a freaking master. I know they hit him more in the chest and they went for the abdomen, and some of these other people who got like Reva got hit with a lightsaber in the sort of like stomach, intestine region or whatever, and there's force healing and stuff. I don't know. But or rage is what kept her kind of, going. But what kept, I mean, I guess a med pack keeps Sabine alive, but the dagger to Master Indara was like,
I mean, Anakin's cut in half and like burned like
dude
with lava, and is still fine.
I know. I that's what I'm saying. I struggle. I kind of grossly said to Lottie in the first episode, I was like, I wish they would have killed her in a different way. I wish they would have made it more like this. She's obviously dead. Like she really got her.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars is in Knights of the Old Republic. HK-47, the droid.
Yeah.
Right. He gives like a long speech of how to kill Jedi, and he talks about like, oh, they're stupid. Like really, like you can't kill them with a blaster, can't do it this way. He's like, I would kill them with like a mine, like or poison gas.
Yeah.
Is how he would do it. He's like, you would trick them into doing something like that. And she just kind of trick her in a way by like throwing the thing and then throwing the knife and kind of catches her. But it just is like, dude, you just killed like a Jedi master.
Yep. I know.
Yeah. So it just felt like, especially because she's like getting weak. She's getting wrecked too.
Yeah.
I mean, like she's literally like just like offhanding, like fighting her, and then to catch her, it just didn't feel. Had she been like going toe to toe with her and pushing her back, and she's like, uh-oh. Wow, then it's like, okay, now we're on to something. Like when they fight Darth Maul in episode 1, it's like, oh, this is dude's serious.
This guy could kill everyone.
This guy is legit. And so when he catches Qui-Gon, it's like, oh, that was a dirty trick, Yeah.
And it's believable, absolutely believable. And it's like he's trained for that.
Her doing it, like it just because then we see her like running and trying to escape, and like she's getting tripped with the Force, and so it just feels like she's not as skilled as And
the fact that I know she got the one Jedi Master with just like poison. I guess if she goes toe to toe with Kel Naka and kills Kel Naka pretty easy, I'm gonna be like, then what is like you're bringing the Jedi down. You're just really they don't seem powerful at all. And I'm like, what's the deal? So,
and everyone kind of laughs too. They're like, okay. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill a Jedi. It's like, okay, like,
yeah. It just was strange. So, I got a couple more quotes here real quick. Just run through some of this. I was just thinking about like, I'll read this to you. The Ascension ceremony. They talk about being exiled, and then they say they were blessed with a miracle, the gift of life, claim your destiny. What the thread has tied together, no one can separate. Well, it seems like, they went their separate ways. I mean, it seems like May and, Osha went their separate ways. I thought it sounded more like they were trying to set up some Force dyad thing where it's like the Force has brought them together and they were going to do some of that. Maybe, the only thing that I think would have ticked Star Wars fans off more is if they said the Force created these two, just like Anakin. If they would have said that the Force itself completely created them, and it wasn't like Mother Anastasia, and it was like this was a gift, because they said it's a gift, right? The Force gave us the gift of life. Then you find out, well, no, Mother Anastasia actually like she was the creator, and she had this power to kind of do this thing. I actually was more like thankful, like thank God they did that, because if they would have said the Force created these kids,
that's how a lot of people are kind of interpreting it, though.
I know
from what I'm seeing online.
Yeah, they are, and they're interpreting it as if like this. They're saying these kids are the same as Anakin. And I'm like, well, they almost went that far. They stopped with Mother Anastasia saying she did it, which
that's why I kind of think what this whole deal is going to set up is Plagueis. Is like that's my sort of guess, and I think if you go that whole route, then okay, now we're on to like now you're on to something of like this being important, but not structurally like changing Star Wars, especially because it doesn't, like, it's one thing like if you want to make a big change, like when Dave Filoni released The Mandalorian, and we have a new Yoda character, by the way, right? Oh, that's it's a big deal. Right. And you look, Yoda's born in the same year as Anakin. Like, what's that about? Like, is Yoda potentially a chosen? It's all sort of like question marks, which leaves you interested. And he was, and then you go look at like The Last Jedi, where Rian Johnson's kind of like spitting in the face of Star Wars fans and saying like, yeah, we're going to change it. I want to do this. I'm going to do it my way, type of a thing. And then you do some things that kind of like you kill Snoke. It's like, well, what was that all about? Then like that creates the fan backlash and people not liking the product because you like sort of do it in a way where it's like, well, I'm better, or whatever. And that's kind of the same thing they're doing here, where it's like some of that stuff's going to be lost because it feels like you're going down this route, which could be cool,
right?
When you do it with like the mindset and the package, as we talked about earlier, of like, we want to change Star Wars, as if like Star Wars wasn't cool. Then it's like, okay, but now we look at the decisions you're making and we're like, I don't like that, right?
Exactly.
Whereas like you look at a show like Andor didn't even need to exist, right? We don't need Andor to know anything more about like Star Wars, right?
Absolutely. Great.
What Andor did is said, we like this character and we're going to do some like epic storytelling with this character and give you some more backstory. And they fleshed out some like, in reality, kind of smaller characters. I mean, Mon Mothma, we get to see like the struggle she has to make in like a day-to-day life. Like that doesn't really affect or change, anything by seeing like Mon Mothma's day-to-day like life or whatever.
Oh yeah. Right.
And so like all we really get now is like, all we're getting with the Acolyte is just like, wow, we're gonna like change the way the Force works and all this stuff. Now you're dealing with the big stuff, and it just doesn't.
And you didn't need to. Like you could have done something similar to what, like you said with Andor. You could have just showed us a really cool kind of crime scene, like who were these Jedi and like how maybe they're dabbling in some of the, like it was started down a pretty cool path, and then they just said we're gonna play with fire and we're gonna go big. The problem is you don't have enough time to do that actually in the show. I keep thinking, I'm like, you should have done hour-long episodes then and really explained this more and really build it up and made us care and feel something for these characters, because now
or maybe you do like maybe they should have done like 3 episodes. Like you get 3 episodes week 1, and then episode 4 would be this week, right? Because like they've done that before too, where it's like sometimes you need like 3 episodes to really kind of grasp. But like I think they did it with the Andor. You got like 3 episodes, and I think Mandalorian sometimes they did that too. Because I do feel like you should have given us all 3 as like one block, because now we'd be on episode 4 and we'd be like, I think like reviewers and everything, like, okay, now that I've seen it, I understand a little more. It's just kind of I think they've fumbled a lot of things with the show, to
like you said. I mean, if you packaged a show that was controversial with 2 episodes, that was my whole reason to have you kind of rate this. And looking at what people were saying, it's like there were people going nuts in episode 1 and 2 because of the packaging and whatever, but they weren't that bad. And so then now with a controversial episode, if you would have packaged it with the first 3, like you said, okay, maybe you could have more people fight through that and get to know, all right, we're excited. You went from 2 episodes and you gave us a flashback, and then now get us in there, because people will just tune out. I feel like people are not gonna, I don't know, they're not gonna hold in there to hear the rest of the story. Like there are things that there's clearly gonna be more stuff that is said, and we're gonna have to figure out what's going down and how did the Jedi not know about this Sith Lord? How did these witches know how to do this thing that the Sith have been trying to figure out for a long time? Did they pass it over to the Sith or did they not? Because you could still save this by saying, maybe they don't pass it over. Maybe that's why Plagueis is still confused about it, or he only got part of the information because they flat out did it. There is clearly a ritual that they did. They probably sacrificed a human being to bring these 2 kids into life or something, and Sith would be willing to do that. Whatever. Yeah, the covenant, like the just struck, like the covenant as like in theory, that's kind of a cool group, right? Like the idea, oh hey, here's this group of women that like maybe you like, because you showcase they're all different races and the species in Star Wars, and like maybe one of them is a Night Sister, and maybe it was passed down and they sort of splintered off of the Night Sisters because they call themselves a witch, right? So it feels like maybe they ultimately can. And what's her name is I know she's like a Dathomiri. Yeah, she's got like
Dathomiri, So you've got that going too. So it's like, okay, like now we're kind of onto something, because that was one of the things that made Mandalorian so cool. Was like, ooh, like it's a splinter group, right? It's like the Children of the Watch is like a splinter. Like, so now we're talking like hardcore. Like that was one of the deals. Is like when we're watching The Mandalorian, we're like, he's like, I don't remove my helmet or any stuff. So now we're talking about like ultra religious zealot type group. And we know that it's different. Whereas here, I don't really know how much more we're going to learn about this group. They might just like move off of it.
I know, and that's what's sort of upsetting. Actually, if they were going to move off of it that quick, then they should have tied them into like a splinter group of the Night Sisters, because then we would have all this context and say, okay, I kind of understand. You don't have to do it. If you mention that word, that name, then we can kind of build our own backstory. But when you don't tell us who they are, and they're just some new group because you want to make a new coven of witches, but you don't tell us. I think there's still a chance that they're going to fill in a lot of those question marks and gaps, and we're gonna get more of it.
How many episodes is this season total? Is it
8,
10 or 8?
I think it's 8.
Yeah.
So we're 3. We've got 5 more to go. So still could. It's been paced pretty well, and I have to say, for full disclosure, because I'm gonna get up here and tell a lot. It's just been awesome, by the way, dude. Thanks for doing it, because this is I freaking love this. This is wild. But it's like I did initially come out of that episode last night and be like, what's the big deal? And then I was just sort of like, why are people going to be fired up about this? Because most people are going to be like, whatever, a couple witches want to have a baby and all this kind of stuff. There's witch magic and stuff, but then it's just the implications of it. It's the fact that it's packaged here. Yeah, it's all of that. It's how the Force works and what they're trying to explain to us, the Force, and people aren't going to like that. And it's just anything that they wanted to kind of get across in this show, it felt like it was dead before it started, with all the packaging like we talked about.
Yeah, it's just the press tour was just not doing themselves any favors, and that sucks, right? I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm actually like a little more okay with this show, and not like oh my god, this is like the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars, is because I saw all of this stuff and I saw everyone reacting to it, so I actually went into the show with like the lowest of expectations.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I was like, this isn't as bad as I thought. And maybe I've said for years, I think Disney is like secretly kind of pushing some of this stuff. Yeah. Right. Where they're like, if you don't like it, then you are like racist or sexist or whatever. Because I mean, they do that with any Disney show that seems to tank. They seem to do it. Like they did it with the Marvels. They did it with, so a lot of these other things. It's like, maybe just perhaps the show the show wasn't that good. They are saying, Disney is out there saying, like trying to spin it and saying, oh, this is the biggest Disney Plus premiere of this year. There's only been 2 other Disney Plus premieres. One is X-Men 97, which is amazing, by the way.
Is it?
But
okay.
X-Men 97 is so good. But it's a cartoon, right, from the 90s. So not a lot of people it's not going to draw the numbers as the big new Star Wars show. And the other is Echo, which is kind of like a small Marvel character spinoff. So by default, it is the best. It's going to be still not. Yeah, it's the spin. It's the spin that you put on it. I wish they wouldn't say anything. I wish they would just let this come out and do its thing, because there's a bunch of hooks. Jackie, what's her name? Daphne Keene. Logan, the little girl from Logan. Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, freaking awesome. She's in His Dark Materials. Great actress. Super athletic. I'm like, this is cool. I can't wait to see her in action. I'm down. Saul, the whatever his name is from Squid Game. I'm so in. Loved him in Squid Game. Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like, oh my God. A lot of people are criticizing him, but I don't know. To me, he's like quiet. He reminds me of Qui-Gon, man. I don't know. I'm in. I'm just anybody. I'll go toe to toe with anybody who criticizes him. It's like, I'll even say that Mother Anastasia's acting was freaking great, but like, God dang it, now like you went there and you did all this stuff, and I feel like people aren't going to love that character because of the lines that she. I actually kind of like Coral too. Her. Her whatever. I don't know if it's her wife or her lover or whatever, and she's part of that group. I had to go look her up. I'm like, I know I've seen her somewhere, and she's like sort of a smaller actress. She was in like a couple episodes of The Blacklist, which is like a kind of spy whatever show. And I was like, I know I've seen her somewhere, but I was like, I have to go find out who this person is because I know I've seen him. So I was like, I was definitely intrigued enough to go search and read some more about it. Yeah, they had some heavy hitter, actors and actresses in this, and I think I'm thinking, where would you rank this right now among the live action Disney? Dude, the crazy thing is, me, I've always been super optimistic. Actually, really tend to be very fanboy about Star Wars or whatever. And right now, it's got too much. It's actually the controversy that's just got it at. It's not. It's. Hold on. It's better than Book of Boba Fett. It's better than Book of Boba Fett. I disagree, but that's okay. Because I like Book of Boba Fett more than I like Kenobi. Right. Exactly. And I like because I thought I also Kenobi, liked. I actually. Well, I mean, Yeah, just like Book of Boba Fett, it's just so weird. We've talked about it a long time, but it's just because it's like the first 5 episodes are like its own thing and it's cool. Then you get like a full episode of The Mandalorian, which is cool, but it's not, and then it's from there, it's just like super choppy and weird.
Right.
Yeah. So I still have it I would have this at last because I think I like Ahsoka more. For me, it's like Mandalorian's number 1, and it's and Andor is a number 2.
I think I totally forget what I even said. I was on a podcast. They asked me to come on. It was like a Hoth hangout or something, and we did a rating. And I fanboyed over Kenobi, and I was like, it's still pretty high, just because the highs were so high for me. I was like, freaking love.
No, it has some really cool moments for sure. But the final fight is amazing.
And when we covered that, though, you were freaking right. Like some of the stuff, it's like, dude. Afterwards, I went and like read some of what could have been, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Just because, why didn't you just take? Why is Commander Cody not in that freaking show? Why are some of these things not? Why did they do? Anyway, but that's a whole nother conversation. But for me, Acolyte right now, and it sucks because I really like the cast in this. I think some of the action is cool. I think Kelnaka, this is the same guy, Jonas, playing Kelnaka that plays Chewbacca. It's like, okay, he's in this. This is cool. But I in one episode, it feels like they just tried to. Feels like they went too far. They went too far with this stuff, and they tried to do too much.
I do think they will need to, by the end of this, I think 2 things need to happen. One, I think they need to tie it into Plagueis.
Yeah.
Because that'd be cool. Because then it's like you're not like saying the Force created these women, and it doesn't like totally destroy the Anakin. If anything, it sort of like adds a little bit to it, but not enough to like structurally hurt it. And then it's like a little that intrigue, and now it's kind of cool. Right. 2, we have to see Yoda. I think you have to see Yoda because now like we know Yoda's there, and and even if it's just a 1 episode type of thing, it sort of connects the whole deal without making it like
Okay, would you have time? Can I ask one final question? Because about Yoda. So in episode 1, the whole idea, and this has been seeing this all over the place. They show up. Qui-Gon's like, Sith are back. Ki-Adi-Mundi's like, don't think so, bro. Don't think so. Mace Windu's like, I'm pretty sure we would have known. By the end, Yoda's like, hey, he kind of looks at Mace Windu like, we kind of know that the Sith rule by 2. If they are back, this is was this the master or the apprentice? I do feel like there's enough there in episode 1 to maybe suggest that Yoda and Mace and certain members do know things that maybe everybody else. Yoda's been around for longer. Maybe as the council members change, he's kind of the guy.
That's what Dooku Lost is all about. And Yoda is like the key part of that.
Absolutely. And so it's like, I feel like you're right, that if they would have Yoda in this and there is some sort of like him weighing in on this controversy and Jedi are killed. Jedi are being killed. How is the Grand Master not informed? He better be informed because this is big stuff. It's hard to kill a Jedi. It is hard unless there's just some accident. There's some especially when someone's assassinating Jedi. That's a problem. So the small council that's going to be convened, it's like Venestra seems like she's going to be convening that council. So I'm with you. I think there needs to be maybe a small glimpse to have Yoda. One, it would tie us in to everything else. It would make it feel more kind of connected, because it feels way just not disconnected. Cool that we saw Coruscant. You got to bring places like that. The Jedi Temple, you got to see the old stuff that was there in the prequels to help us make those connections. Not you and I, but people who are just casually watching. And to have Yoda, that'll bring a lot of people in. Check your show out. Give it a second look. What does he know that everybody else doesn't know? I know some Star Wars fans are like, this show is not savable after this episode. I still think I don't think it's a 0. I don't think it's any of those things. I just think that they just went too aggressive with this whole narrative with because the Force creating life is a big deal, and then the Sith are trying to do it, and they're willing to do anything, and clearly the witches were willing to do anything to do it as well. But I think they just really went too far with it. But because I don't mind at all that, like I said, the Coven of Witches, like you said, it's cool. All this stuff is cool, but
there's definitely pieces here that they could play with and could be cool. Like there's a lot of things to fix, and like I said earlier, I think this is one of those shows to me that seems like, man, if you were to take some of that fan criticism, feedback, even the positives, and like a season 2, you could really kind of flesh this out into something cool. Like there's certainly pieces there that you could turn this into something. And
they've said, I think Leslie Headland said that this will end as if like it can end and this can be it, or if there's interest, there's a setup for more, which I'm with you. I think you kind of almost need to tell more story now because you've opened too many. You've tried to like fill in gaps and tell us more of the story, but now you've actually sort of messed with stuff that's in the prequels. So you almost need to tell more story now to help us understand how these other things are translating to the prequels. But we'll have to wait and see and kind of, figure it out and whatnot. But interesting. I just know it's gonna be controversial, dude. And I can't wait. I actually, after we're done here, I'm gonna just queue up my YouTube and start watching what everybody's saying because there's lives going on right now, and I'm like, man.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know.
It's just nuts. So, dude. All right. Thanks so much, friends. I got links down below for Matt. At Super Games Bros. BTK's firing off. You guys are you doing right after the show? Are you doing like a live watch? We're not going to
do the live watch. We kind of talked about it, and you just have to deal with bots and all this other stuff, and we're just like, it's just not as So no, we are gonna record right away and post an episode that'll be up like that night, and so then we can check it out in the morning and everything, and then it'll be all sorts of clips and stuff on TikTok and everything. But yep, House of the Dragon this weekend.
Nice.
And I'm oof.
Yep. Matt's team black, right? I mean, you're black, right?
Absolutely.
Loyalist.
I mean, hey, all I'm gonna say is, there's a show with 2 female leads, and it gets 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So clearly, it's possible. All right,
it's absolutely. It's not that it's good story. It's good story. It's freaking drama, man, dude. It's so intriguing because Lottie's she doesn't know what happens or whatever, and so I've been like, just she's been asking questions. I think we even had one of your guys' episodes, your speculation. About things, some stuff that's like book to show. What are they going to kind of do? And she's like, what could be so dramatic and violent and crazy? Yeah. I think it was one of your.
I don't want to spoil it, man. But it's rough.
Because she was like, could it really be that? I was like, oh yeah. So if based upon the book, it could be that bad. Look what they're talking about.
George R. R. Martin is saying it's like even worse than the Red Wedding.
Oh my gosh! It really, because it could be. I mean, like on page, you're like, "Wow, that's
episode dark. 1." The ending of episode 1. Just stay tuned, man. I can't wait to see Twitter.
That's awesome. I can't wait. That's gonna be cool. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So, all right, hey friends, thanks so much here. If you guys got thoughts, by the way, I mean, next week I'll kind of come back on and do some different thoughts with it's controversial. So I'm hoping to hear from some of our friends just to, if you really thought highly of this and you're completely on the other side of this, please freaking let me know. Send me a DM at YodaStew77 or just, the email there as well, all down in the description. And I'd love to hear from you and see what you guys think. So with that, go check out, again, links are down below. Check out Matt and the show. Those guys will be live they'll be posting on Sunday and then at follow-up Friday too, right? We got a double episode, double drops. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks again to Matt. Guys, we appreciate you. We'll be back as always. May the Force be with you.
It's over, Commander.
Did you hear that?
Don't underestimate the Force.